A lot is going on in this morning's reading. So this morning I was in Mark 14, Matthew 26, Luke 22, and John 13. And we're in the time in the events as they unfold where Jesus is betrayed. And those gospels each start with the fact that the Pharisees and scribes were looking for a way to kill him, and Judas came to them and said, "How much money will you give me if I betray him?" And that's when they give him 30 pieces of silver, and then Judas begins to plan the opportune time to hand Jesus over to them to be killed. Simultaneously is when Jesus tells the disciples to go prepare a place for the Passover. And that's when he tells them, "Hey, go into the town, and when you see a guy with a jar, he's going to lead you to the house. And when you get to the house, tell the owner of the house, hey, the Lord has need for the room, and he will take you to the upper room where you can prepare for the Passover." And so they have the Passover. We have the whole, the time that we now uses communion, where Jesus gives them the bread and gives them the wine and says that it represents his body and his blood, and that and Jesus is not going to partake of that again until they're with him in heaven. Simultaneously, he's warning them that you're all going to betray me. And then that's when Peter's like, "Lord, I'll die." And Jesus says that, "No, you're going to betray me 3 times before the morning, before the rooster crows. But one of you will betray me." And that's when he really outs Judas, although the other disciples don't seem to catch it. And then tells Judas, "Hey, what you're planning to do, go do it." And that sets in motion all of the stuff that comes immediately in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus goes out with the disciples to pray, and some of them go a little bit farther up the hill with him, but they're tired, and the scriptures say their eyes are heavy. And so they're sleeping, and Jesus goes up a little bit farther and prays that, "God, if there's any way we could do this without me going to the cross, let's choose that option." He goes back down, sees the disciples sleeping. He's like, "You guys can't sleep? You guys can't stay awake and pray?" And then he goes back up and prays some more. "Lord, if there's any way for this cup to pass." And he goes back down, and they're sleeping again. He said, and this time he lets them sleep. He goes back up, prays the same thing, comes back down, and wakes them up and says, "You can't even pray for 1 hour with me." And then at that time, that's when Judas comes with all the Pharisees and the soldiers and the scribes and such, and tells them, "Hey, the guy that I kiss, that's the dude that you want." Which is kind of weird, because everybody at this time knew who Jesus was. He was pretty famous, but maybe like the soldiers that were going to actually arrest Jesus, maybe they didn't know who he was. So Jesus goes up and kisses him, and then they go in to arrest him, and then kind of chaos breaks out. Right? Peter takes out the sword, cuts off the guy's ear. Jesus stops him and says, this is not the time for that. Heals the guy's ear. He tells the Pharisees and the scribes and soldiers, "Hey, every day I was teaching in the synagogue, and yet you didn't take me there. Why are you doing this here now?" Nevertheless, chaos breaks out, and the disciples all flee. In fact, in Mark we're told it says, it just randomly says a young man that was just wearing a linen cloth was with him, and he tried to flee too, and they grabbed him, but he tore out of his linen cloth and ran off naked. And so it's just random who that, I don't know who that young man was, but just this random guy in scripture. Well, then of course they take Jesus, and they begin to question him. Are you, the scribes and the Pharisees were trying to get him to admit something that was worthy of death. And then finally they determined that based on the fact that he said that he could destroy the mount. No, actually, that wasn't it. What was blasphemous was when he said that he will be sitting on the throne of power with God. And so they said that was blasphemous. That's enough. They and they seized him. They started kicking him. They blindfolded him. They spit him. They hit him, telling him, "Okay, Messiah, prophesy now. Who just hit you?" Things like that. And this is where we leave it. This is where the story ends today. The beginning of the torture that he's about to experience because of my sin and because of your sin. Let's see what happens tomorrow.